On fine sunny weekends in winter, it's a pleasure to be out in the garden or on the allotment. Winter is also the time when gardeners must begin planning and preparing for next year's crops. Mr. Turner believes in starting early, and he's taking with him his boy Alan to help him with a few jobs. First, they set up their seed potatoes to sprout. This should be done as soon as you can get the seed. As farmers can grow potatoes more economically, Mr. Turner is only planting a few this year and is growing more green vegetables for the lean winter months. Potatoes do best when sprouted in the light, so they are put into shallow boxes. One end of the seed, called the rose, has more and stronger eyes and should be placed uppermost in the box. This one has sprouted thin, spindly shoots through having been kept in a warm, dark place. These should be broken off, though they have already weakened the seed, and it will not give such good results as one with good, strong eyes. Mrs. Turner also comes along to lend a hand to gather some vegetables for the kitchen. She cuts her weekly supply of onions from the bunches kept hanging in the hut. By hanging them up as soon as they ripened, the onions have had a nice flow of air all around them and have kept in good condition right through the winter months. Meanwhile, Mr. Turner and Alan have finished setting up the potatoes. The boxes are made so that when placed one above the other, plenty of light and air can get to the tubers. To get the strongest light, they should be left near the windows. If there is any danger of frost, cover them with sacking at night, for the slightest frost will kill the eyes and make them useless. As the winter months go by, some of the store crops need attention in the clamps. Mr. Turner, who grew only 5 rows of potatoes last year, made a small potato clamp in the autumn, and now is the time to see how they have kept. So while the others go off to do another job, he opens the clamp. With a fork, he carefully digs a hole in the topsoil about 2 feet in diameter. Then he removes the straw and examines the potatoes. If some have sprouted, the sprout should be rubbed off. Some may have become diseased. If so, they should be removed. Mrs. Turner and Alan are also digging out vegetables. These are parsnips. Being a late crop, parsnips can be left in the ground until wanted for eating. But this part of the allotment must be prepared for other crops. They are lifting the parsnips and laying them in a trench dug in a corner of the allotment. They are laid side by side and finally covered in with earth. Mr. Turner is now closing the clamp again. This needs to be done carefully. He recovers the open part with straw to prevent the frost getting in. Then over this he puts a good layer of soil, and the clamp is made waterproof as before. Besides potatoes and onions, Mrs. Turner wants some greens to make the family meals interesting and healthy. She starts with a nice Savoy. Next, she picks some Brussels sprouts. As with all greens, she is careful to pick those that are most mature, leaving the smaller ones to reach full growth. Then back home for dinner. On the next allotment, their neighbour, Mr. Bailey, has cleared a space and is giving it a dressing of lime. Notice how he is working with his back to the breeze. so that the lime is not blown into his face or onto his clothes. The breeze also helps to spread the lime more evenly. Most allotments or gardens pay for a dressing of lime once in 3 years. The best time is after the winter digging. About 3/4 of a pound to the square yard is a nice dressing. When it has been evenly distributed, it should then be lightly pricked into the surface with a fork. Lime counteracts any tendency to sourness in the soil and, among other things, helps to break it up. If your soil is heavy with clay, it's a good idea to ridge it early in the winter. Turner did this ridging back in November. First, he marked out the ground for 2-foot strips. Then he set a line as a guide to keep the ridges straight. To start the ridging, Turner first removed the soil to a depth of 1 spit for about 2 feet along the first strip and put it down near where he was to finish the last strip. The ridges were then formed by 2 spits being laid together in the middle of the row, and a third put on top of them. When he reached the end of the first strip, the first few spits from the second strip were taken to complete the first ridge. Then he repeated this for the rest of the plot. Good gardening depends on thinking and planning ahead for next season's crops. By ridging part of his allotment, Turner was preparing for the spring and making sure that his soil will be well broken down and aerated. The ridging will expose as much of the soil as possible to the crumbling action of the winter frosts. Bailey, on his allotment, is now reaping the benefits of his summertime planning. The compost heap he made during the summer months is invaluable now that the time for winter digging has come. He tips out small heaps of the well-rotted compost over this piece of ground, which is going to be planted with onions, peas and beans, crops that need a very rich soil. Now, here are the Turner boys come to say that dinner is nearly ready. And while they are here, their father shows them how to replant chives. He divides the clump into smaller parts and then replants them 6 inches apart in a row. The end of the plot by the side of the path is a good place for chives, alongside such things as mint and sage. It is quite a mistake to imagine, as some people do, that winter is a dead time in the garden. There are always plenty of jobs to be done. And if each season you plan well ahead for the next, you need never be short of a good supply of vegetables for yourself and for your family.